The Elder Scrolls Online is without a doubt one of the most unique MMOs on the market today. Its horizontal content progression and emphasis on playing how you want easily sets it apart from the competition. ESO keeps all its content relevant by having dynamic gear sets that scale to your current level, meaning the same piece of armor you get at level 10 can be recrafted or dropped for you again at max level and still be relevant. This was a feature that I've always really liked about ESO, but as the years go on and more sets are added to the game, we've sort of reached a point where the number of different gear sets is getting a little crazy. There are literally hundreds of sets in the game, and that number keeps growing every year. I'm starting to think that the rate at which new sets are being added is going to be unsustainable at some point, and it looks like the ESO development team at ZeniMax Online have taken notice of that as well. Recently, a survey was sent out specifically asking players to provide feedback on ESO's gear sets. How do you learn about new item sets? Which type of sets do you like to use? How satisfied are you with set pieces as a reward? These are all great questions to ask, but the ones that really got me thinking were about how players feel about the number of item sets in the game and how often new sets are released. I think it's too early to say that this survey indicates a full gear rework is coming, but it's definitely safe to say ZOS is thinking about it. With Seasons of the Wormcult and Solstice being a transitional year as we move from chapters to seasons, I think we're going to see all kinds of changes, both big and small, to different aspects of the base game. The devs have said more than once recently that one of the reasons they're doing seasonal updates instead of yearly chapters is so that they can focus in on some, let's call them stale parts of the game, to create a more seamless experience no matter what part of the game you're playing. For example, they're working their way through the base game zones and upgrading some of the aesthetics from 2014. We already saw it happen with the starting zones of each alliance, and I expect that they're going to be working their way through the rest of the base game in the foreseeable future. When it comes to gear though, I feel like a lot of unforeseen problems have popped up over the years. If you've been playing as long as I have, you'll remember the days before the transmute station and the collection system. You know, that menu that's often referred to as the sticker book. Back then, if you wanted to try out a new build, it meant you had to run whatever content over and over until you got the right pieces of gear with the right trait you want and store that set in your bank when you're not using it. I used to have multiple copies of essentially the same gear pieces, especially monster sets, taking up a lot of bank space. If you got rid of a piece, you'd have to refarm it, no reconstructions. This was a problem that ZOS fixed by, like I said, eventually introducing the transmute station and collections. But in my opinion, an unintended consequence of those changes, along with the fact that the game is constantly stuffing my bag full of gear sets that I don't really know or care about, is that getting gear pieces just feels kind of annoying if I'm being perfectly honest. Truthfully, I don't even look at any gear pieces that drop for me anymore. When my bags start to get full, I summon Galadil and literally deconstruct everything in my bags. I might get a couple notifications that something was added to my collections, but half the time I don't even read that. I don't think getting gear in an MMO is supposed to feel this way, and I certainly don't think that's how ZOS wants players to feel about it. I know I've turned into a pretty casual player at this point, and I could be wrong, but I find it very unlikely that a lot of players are regularly swapping out or trying new gear sets outside of maybe the newest ones that come out with a new update. There are more than 600 different sets in the game, and that number keeps growing. It feels pretty necessary at this point to go outside of the game, to guides or forums, to even know what sets are good and which ones aren't. Not that any set is particularly bad, but you know, with so many options it can be daunting to figure out. I don't know about you, but I seriously doubt players are able to just scroll through the collections menu and figure out the perfect set that they want to use when they're planning a new build. Realistically, there are probably, 50 to 100 sets that most people regularly use because community members and content creators who are smarter than me have crunched the numbers and figured out which ones are the most worth using. I know it sounds like I'm complaining, and I really don't mean it that way, but I think even ZOS agrees that having too many options can feel just as bad as having too few. Enough of me rambling about the problem. Let's just assume that there might be too many gear sets in the game. The real question is, what can they do to fix it? And my answer is, I'm not really sure. I think in the short term, it would be an interesting idea to take a look at the existing sets and any sets that are really similar, maybe just combine them into one set that can drop from both sources. That seems to me like the simplest way to eliminate some of the bloat without doing too much harm. Maybe they could revisit some older set bonuses and give them unique cosmetic effects, like maybe one set makes the player's eyes glow in combat, or your character does a flex emote automatically when you exit combat. Something fun like that could add some relevance back to the less used sets. Or here's an idea I really like, maybe add a group effect, like if multiple players in the party are wearing overland sets from the same zone, maybe they buff each other in some way. That could be an interesting way to utilize a set that might not be the best on its own, but in conjunction with each other your whole party does better because you all chose to use those sets. That could be interesting, right? Look, I think we could literally remove half the sets in the game and barely anyone would notice, but a whole new set of problems would come from eliminating existing sets, so I get why this is such a hard problem to find solutions for. I'm sure ZeniMax has people considering multiple paths as we speak, and it would certainly be interesting to keep an eye on future announcements to see what ends up happening. And hey, maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe this isn't even a problem at all, and most people like having so many options to choose from. If you have any thoughts, opinions, or other ideas, I'd love to hear about them in the comments of this video. And don't forget to check your email to see if you got this survey as well. I think it went out to a large number of players, if not everybody, so if you're up for taking it, your response could help shape the future of gear sets in ESO. If you didn't get the survey email, you can still post about it on the official ESO forums. I know the devs are constantly monitoring and reading the feedback provided there, but of course be constructive if you want them to actually listen to it. And that's about all I've got for this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and a comment. Subscribe for more, and until next time, see ya.